30 days since the first shots rang out, shattering the fragile peace that once held this nation together. The city, once bustling with life and laughter, now lies under a heavy blanket of dust, smoke, and uncertainty. Streets that were once filled with children playing and neighbors greeting each other have turned into battlegrounds and empty corridors echoing with silence. In these 30 days, everything has changed. People have changed. Fear is no longer just a feeling, it's a constant companion. Shops stand abandoned, their windows smashed or boarded up, a stark reminder that normal life has evaporated. The power grid flickers sporadically, and food supplies grow scarce. Families huddle in basements or makeshift shelters, praying for a sign of hope amid the rubble. Government broadcasts have ceased or are filled with propaganda, barely reaching the people who need them most. Rumors spread like wildfire. Who controls the North District? Which factions have merged or fallen apart? Where the next clash will erupt. Trust is a rare currency now. Everyone watches their backs. Yet, even in the darkness, some pockets of resistance organize. They are fragmented, cautious, but determined. Their radios buzz quietly, sharing coordinates, updates, and warnings. They know that survival depends on information, staying one step ahead in a world where alliances shift as quickly as the wind. The civilians caught in the crossfire are learning the harsh truth. This war isn't a battle between two armies. It's a war that consumes families, neighbors, and friends. The lines blur, and everyone must ask themselves, who can I trust? What do I fight for? And will this nightmare ever end? Across the city and beyond, multiple battlefronts have formed. The war isn't contained. It sprawls like an infection into every corner of the nation. From the shattered skyscrapers downtown to the rural villages on the outskirts, no place is safe. In the Northern District, fierce clashes rage between militia groups and remnants of government forces. The rebels have dug in, using the maze of abandoned factories and warehouses as strongholds. Artillery echoes day and night, punctuated by sporadic gunfire and the distant rumble of tanks. Civilians trapped in these zones face impossible choices: flee and risk exposure, or stay and endure the chaos. The southern suburbs, once peaceful communities of working families, now host brutal street fights. Here, the combatants are less organized, but no less dangerous. Armed gangs and rogue factions have taken advantage of the turmoil, turning neighborhoods into war zones. Looting and violence have become the new normal. Medical facilities, if still operational, are overwhelmed. Doctors and nurses work tirelessly, often risking their lives to treat the wounded with scarce supplies. Stories emerge of makeshift hospitals hidden in basements, where volunteers patch up injuries under flickering candlelight. Yet many wounded never make it to care, lost in the crossfire or caught between shifting front lines. Despite the horrors, tales of courage and humanity surface. Civilians form underground networks to smuggle food, medicine, and information. Strangers band together to protect their streets, sharing what little they have. Some risk everything to evacuate children and the elderly, ferrying them through dangerous checkpoints. But with every victory, every loss, the war drags on. The fabric of society unravels, and the question remains: who will emerge from this broken city? And what will be left of the people who survive? War changes everything, especially the everyday lives of those caught in its grip. The past month has revealed the harsh reality behind every statistic and headline. Real people are suffering. Basic necessities like food, clean water, and medicine have become luxuries. Markets that once brimmed with fresh produce and daily goods are now ghost towns or battlegrounds. Many rely on scavenging abandoned stores or rationing meager supplies. Hunger gnaws at families, and malnutrition is spreading quietly among the young and old. Electricity is unreliable or absent in most areas. Without power, communication is disrupted, refrigeration fails, and darkness envelops homes early each night. People use candles and fires, risking detection, but the alternative is cold and isolation. Fear governs daily decisions. Parents whisper warnings to their children about the dangers outside. Schools are closed indefinitely, and hope for education or normalcy seems distant. Mental health suffers silently as the trauma of loss, displacement, and constant danger takes its toll. Stories of disappearance, arrests, and executions circulate, fueling anxiety. Trust erodes not just between factions, but within communities and families. Everyone is forced to question loyalties, survival strategies, and what sacrifices they are willing to make. Yet amid the hardship, resilience glimmers. Small acts of kindness, sharing a loaf of bread, protecting a neighbor, risking a run for medicine, remind people that humanity can endure even in the darkest times. Faith, beliefs, and traditions adapt, offering solace and strength. As this war stretches into the weeks, the true cost is visible not in buildings or weapons, but in the broken spirits and fading hope of the people who carry its burden. One of the most unpredictable aspects of this civil war is the shifting landscape of alliances. In a conflict fueled by ideology, desperation, and survival, yesterday's enemies can become today's allies, or vice versa. Faction leaders maneuver carefully, forging temporary truces to gain ground or resources. Some smaller groups dissolve into others, while new players emerge from the shadows. Loyalty is fragile and often transactional. Intelligence from intercepted communications reveals secret negotiations and betrayals. A militia may promise safe passage to a rival group, only to ambush them at dawn. Distrust runs deep, and paranoia colors every interaction. In some neighborhoods, local leaders have formed coalitions to defend against outside forces. These alliances are fragile but necessary, uniting different ideologies under a shared goal: protect the community. Their success varies, often dependent on leadership, resources, and sheer willpower. Foreign interests are rumored to be watching or intervening behind the scenes, adding layers of complexity. Whether through supplying weapons, intelligence, or mercenaries, external influence threatens to prolong the conflict. Amid this chaos, civilians struggle to decode the new power map. Who controls which streets? Who can offer protection? Who will turn on whom next? The uncertainty feeds fear, but also cautious hope that order may yet be restored. Even as destruction seems overwhelming, pockets of hope begin to emerge. Resistance groups, made up of civilians and defectors, work quietly to rebuild some semblance of order. Community gardens sprout in abandoned lots, offering fresh food and a symbol of life returning. Underground schools and clinics operate in secret, teaching children and healing wounds. Communication networks are established using improvised radio equipment, sharing news and coordinating aid. Humanitarian groups risk missions into dangerous zones to provide help. Though limited, these efforts rekindle the belief that recovery is possible. Stories of courage inspire others. Ordinary people, teachers, doctors, former soldiers, rise to lead, organize, and protect. Acts of bravery and solidarity spread through whispers and coded messages. International organizations begin discussions on peace talks, even if fragile and tentative. Negotiators stress the need to protect civilians and open humanitarian corridors. While the war is far from over, these glimmers of hope remind everyone that even in the darkest moments, humanity fights to survive and to rebuild a future beyond the war. 30 days into the Civil War, the invisible wounds are deepening. Soldiers and civilians alike face a relentless assault on their mental resilience, with psychological distress reaching a breaking point. Unlike the physical destruction of buildings, this emotional ruin is subtle but pervasive. Combatants are caught in a loop of exhaustion and hyper-alertness. The constant stress alters their decision-making and impulse control, causing sometimes reckless acts that can have deadly consequences. Nightmares of past battles haunt them, while the absence of normal social interaction fuels isolation and mistrust. Civilians living in conflict zones report symptoms of trauma that often go untreated: confusion, memory loss, and chronic fatigue. The loss of normal routines, schools, and workplaces erodes a sense of stability. People develop coping mechanisms ranging from withdrawal to aggression, challenging the fragile social fabric. This mental breakdown extends beyond individuals to communities. As shared trauma accumulates, traditional support networks fray. Fear of betrayal or infiltration discourages communal gatherings, while despair erodes the motivation for collective action. The war's psychological cost threatens the very foundations of society's ability to recover. As physical infrastructure crumbles, the battle for communication channels intensifies. Both sides recognize that controlling information flow can determine outcomes on and off the battlefield. New, decentralized methods emerge. Local groups engineer improvised relay stations using scavenged parts, creating small, resilient networks that can operate independently of damaged cell towers or internet hubs. These grassroots systems often facilitate critical exchanges, medical aid requests, safe passage warnings, and news updates. The underground press thrives in this environment, printing clandestine newsletters and distributing them by hand when digital means are compromised. Artists and writers create coded messages embedded in everyday objects to bypass censorship. Meanwhile, cyber warfare escalates. Hackers launch attacks against opposing forces' communication infrastructure, attempting to disrupt command coordination and sow confusion. Digital espionage reveals secrets that shift tactical advantages, but also fuels paranoia and suspicion. Technology's role evolves from mere convenience to a survival necessity. This fluid, contested communication landscape influences morale, strategy, and civilian survival, shaping the war's trajectory in ways invisible to the front line, but critical to the outcome. future remains uncertain. 30 days in, and the war continues to consume everything in its path, but the resilience of the people offers a quiet resistance against total collapse. Will this conflict end soon, or will it drag on for years? Can fractured communities come together to rebuild, or will new divisions emerge from the ashes? The choices made now will shape the fate of generations. One thing is clear: life will never be the same. The scars of this war, physical and emotional, will last long after the guns fall silent. As you listen to this transmission, remember those who endure the unthinkable, civilians caught in the crossfire, fighters risking all for their beliefs, families longing for peace. Their stories deserve to be heard. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and hold on to hope.